Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1069 of our daily content grind, and on this nice day, I have got a topic that is going to set a few people off, so, yeah, if you are kind of really attached to your G1 Megatrons, and you really do not understand why he can't be made again, then you might want to hit the back button. Just a fair warning, this discussion is not going to go your way. I'm just saying. So, this has been something that has just been on Transformers' minds forever since the franchise began, and that is the return of Megatron as his original G1 gun form. So, this is my most common question in my monthly Q&A videos, to the point where I now have to have a rule installed as a "don't ask me about Gun Megatron ever again." You know, that's how bad it has gotten. And I know it's going to continue to be bad, so I'm going to make a video specifically to get all my thoughts and opinions out there, because this conversation has come up again. So, in a DM to Evan over on Twitter, Evan from the Transformer design team, he was flat out asked what alt mode that a potential Studio Series 86 Megatron would be. We know from listings that there is one on the way as a leader class toy, probably to scale with the new Commander Optimus. But, just to confirm it, Evan did state that if and when they do get around to a Studio Series 86 Megatron, he will be a tank, not the gun. And it seemed like a lot of people thought this would be like some kind of like magical loophole that, like, because 86 is a toy line devoted to accuracy to their depiction in the movie, that you would have to include him as a gun, right? Because that's what he turns into in the movie. Rip Brawn, poor Brawn, and his vulnerable shoulder. So a lot of people are really upset by this revelation that, yeah, we're going to get another tank Megatron, and I don't know. Some people are just genuinely mad. Some people are blaming the wrong things. Some people just don't understand. So here's what today's video is about. Let's go over why. Let's go over the whole thing. For starters, yes, if you're new to Transformers and you only know Megatron as that gray guy who has a new alt mode every single time they make new media, his original alt mode was a gun, specifically a Walther P-38. And that was just kind of the thing. Transformers were roleplay toys as well as toy cars and jets. It stemmed from a spin-off of the Microman toys, where you had several firearms that transformed into robots, including one that never became a Transformer, who was a revolver. That said, Megatron is actually a very particular and weird one. So he's a Walther P-38, but then you have all the accessories, right? Like the ankle stock, the silencer, the scope. Those are not stock. Those are not the things you normally have on this weapon. It is actually a very special version of the gun. It is based on an old show called A Man from U.N.C.L.E. The Man from U.N.C.L.E. It's an old spy show, think James Bond-ish kind of thing, whereas, James Bond has his signature gun. This was his. Heavily modified Walther P-38, and that was intentional by Takara. In fact, they actually marketed this version of the toy as, Uncle. It's Uncle Megatron. However, for this, so the toy was normally like sold as is, or with all the extra accessories, kind of like how reissues of Megatron go these days. So yes, long history. Yeah, he was a gun. He's a very particular type of gun. Now, once in a blue moon, we will get a gun Megatron, but there are very extreme circumstances to it. It's designed and colored after Nerf guns, or it is a very tiny gun, that cannot be mistaken for a real thing. The last time we got any kind of gun Megatron was in 2016, and this is the American market. I'm not counting masterpiece releases here, just so we're clear on that. Japan's toy market is very, very different. They do not have such regulations. But the last time we got a gun Megatron was a repaint of his Classics figure from 10 years prior, and even in that time, the rules to what a toy gun could look like on the shelves had changed so dramatically they couldn't include Megatron's traditional gray anymore outside of his robot mode. The external parts, the toy gun itself, had to be as unrealistic as they could. So not only do they have the orange safety caps, they also had to cast him in this bright translucent red, which takes up 90% of the body of the gun. That's kind of what they had to go through. That was the loophole that they had to find in order to actually get, another gun Megatron out there. Now, let's get this out of the way really quick, because I've seen this argument come up. I've seen people upset at this. This is not a politically correct thing. This is not a situation of that. This is not like politically correct guns are bad, okay? That's not what we're doing here. I fully admit it's not a political correctness thing. And I am woke AF, okay? I believe you have the right to do whatever you want with your life so long as you are not harming anybody else. You do you. You be you. You have every right to be you. Okay? That said, even I know it's not about that. It's never been about that. You know why? Because this has been a problem, this has been a thing since 1988, which you can't see because the image is a little bit too big. Let me shrink this down. There you go. There you go. Right. So, so read along with me. Section 4 of the Federal Energy Management Improvement Act of 1988 made it unlawful for any person to manufacture, enter into commerce, ship, transport, or receive any toy, look-alike, or imitation firearm unless the firearm contains or has affixed to it a marking approved by the Secretary of Commerce. Realistic guns were off the menu. Now, mostly this just means, like, when they say, like, oh, well, approved markings, so normally that's just an orange safety cap. Raise your hand, owners of a masterpiece Megatron. We've been through that. Which, by the way, did you know that in some states it's illegal to remove those? You can't, it's also illegal to render a toy gun as a realistic one, either by removing those caps or spray painting them. FYI. But that said, 1988 wasn't exactly a hotbed for political correctness. You still had shock comedians making fun of people, for, what country they were born in, nationality, or gender, religion, or, whatever. Everything was still on the table. Political correctness wasn't really the thing that it is today. So I don't want to hear anyone complaining that that's what it's about, because, hey, 1998 called, they said you're wrong. No, really, this comes down to safety. That's basically what it comes down to. Because, believe it or not, people have died over toy guns. Just a few years ago, there was a story about a man who, was walking around Walmart with what someone mistook as a real firearm, called the police. Police came in, shot him on sight, and turns out he's just walking around with an air gun that he picked up off the shelf at the store. And that happened just recently. 1988 figured out that stuff was going to happen. Oh, and by the way, kids have died from this too, by the way. That's happened as well. Which is why the whole thing becomes, what it is now. With like these super bright colors that the toy guns now have to include. And every year it gets stricter and stricter. What the toys have to do in order to actually be released gets weirder and weirder. The body shape has to be unrealistic. The colors have to be vibrant throughout the entire toy. And, just trying to make it as unmistakable for the real thing as possible. Or even if someone did actually modify it or spray paint it into the correct color, it's still not going to look like a correct weapon. The other side of this isn't just, people were getting hurt because people thought they were armed when they weren't. It's also, the other factor here is people also start robbing places with fake guns. Like, again, this one that's on screen right now, spray painted black, go rob a convenience store. I am not recommending that. I am not suggesting that, but that's, again, a thing that happens. And it's a way that people who normally cannot obtain guns can become very dangerous with one. So that's another thing. I've heard the argument before, but they sell realistic toy guns right next to the actual Transformers. No, they don't. No, they don't. I don't know what Walmart you're going to. I have specifically looked for this, and I cannot find it. Every gun I see is bright colored or unrealistically shaped. The only time I ever see a toy gun on the shelves anymore is any place where the stock is dubious in quality, to say the least. A toy shop at a flea market that's getting like cheap Chinese toys that don't go through those regulations. Dollar stores where, half the food is probably illegal to sell because of the dates or markings on them, let alone the toys, when they're already selling knockoffs that may 50-50 shot contain lead in some way. Yeah, you're probably not going, you're probably not going to deal with anyone there that's kind of like concerned with the law. So no, and there's the other factor to this, and that it's not just Hasbro. Here's the bottom line. If this was legal in any way, shape, or form, Hasbro would do it because it would bank. They would make so much money off of a brand new gun, Megatron. And if $1 billion corporation's greed doesn't convince you that this can't be done, I don't know what will. I genuinely don't know what will at that point. But it's not just Hasbro's reluctance to do it, it's the retailer's reluctance to take them in. Case in point, this is Lava Megatron. The idea is that, there's, I can't even remember the G1 episode offhand. I think Heavy Metal War. Am I that geek enough to have nailed it? I don't know. But Megatron gets dumped into lava, and this was their excuse for coloring him like this, in bright safety orange and blue, and this was actually shipped, not shipped, but pitched to Toys R Us to work into the commemorative G1 reissue line. This was Hasbro trying to make the colors as bright and poppy for G1 Megatron as they possibly could, trying to get Toys R Us to take it in, and they didn't. And this was in the mid-2000s. This was before the rules got even stricter than they were then. Like this did not fly, because even if technically, yes, it becomes legal to sell, that doesn't mean a retailer is going to be willing to take it. So that's another factor. Now, when you tell me that, oh, I saw it at a Walmart, they're right next to the Transformers, you might be thinking the airsoft guns, because, those are the sporting goods are right next to the toys. And technically, airsoft and BB guns are classified as sporting goods. So, unless you can figure out how to get a G1 Megatron toy to actually qualify as an air gun and still transform in order to put him in the sporting goods section, you're not going to get a gun Megatron at retail. You're just not. So technically, these are not toys, and they do not fall under the same realm. Mostly because it's very hard to, you don't often see somebody trying to rob a liquor store with something that looks like a mini sniper rifle. So it's not as dangerous. But again, you got to be 18 to buy them, etc., etc. So it's not something kids could have. Again, it's a more safety thing. Whatever. We know this. But it's not the same thing. They are technically not legally classified as toys. So take those out of the equation as well. You know what's weird about this whole Megatron thing? You know what's weird about the whole Megatron? I don't recall this happening to Soundwave. Now, don't get me wrong. When Soundwave was absent from the Transformer shelves, that era where every Megatron who came out was vastly different than the previous one. When all that was happening, Soundwave was just one of those G1 characters we still loved, and he was missing. But when he eventually came back around and they started doing Soundwave again, I didn't hear nearly as much vitriol for Soundwave being different as Megatron. I mean, yes, there were still people going, why isn't he a cassette player? And we have to explain to him that a kid in the 2000s doesn't know what a cassette player is, let alone 2020s, by the way. So there's that factor to it. But we reinvented Soundwave so many times. And even then, very rare we go back to the original G1. And yet, everyone was a lot more cool and chill about that than they are Megatron. And I was trying to figure that out. I was trying to figure out why. Why did people not raise the same, havoc over Soundwave? Getting new alt modes rather than Megatron. So I thought of it. For starters, it's probably the reissue quantity, because Soundwave, his G1 toy, has been made available many, many times, whereas Megatron's reissues have been cut off and limited. So this is one of the first real reissues you could have gotten. This is the 16 special for the 16th anniversary of the brand in 2001. I own this one. It's great. It's all in one. Literally everything they could throw in from Transformers history for this mold is included, and it's great. However, 10 years later, they would release what to date is the last G1 Megatron reissue. Takara has not done it since, which seems kind of weird. It might be that the mold has just degraded enough to not be able to produce anymore, and because the American or really international market is completely cut off from releasing this toy, it may not be viable for them to remake the mold just to release in Japan only. So part of your grievance with Megatron is probably the fact that Soundwave gets modern toys that do his original alt mode. We're getting a reissue of the Netflix one doing that, but Megatron doesn't have that option of just waiting for a reissue, because it's been over a decade since we had that reissue, and it doesn't look like it's likely going to happen at any point. And then it kind of clicked a little bit. Is it because Tank Megatron doesn't do the thing? Because Soundwave still does the thing. Most times we get a Soundwave toy today, it still does the thing Soundwave is most popular for, which is storing his little minions inside his chest. It seems like as long as we could do that, people really weren't arguing what Soundwave transformed into. Yes, there's a vocal minority, but it's not nearly as long-running as the G1 Gun Megatron people are. It just feels like in that realm, there's just a lot of people that don't accept the reality of the situation, but Soundwave was still okay. And I think it's because he did the thing. Tank Megatron doesn't do the thing. The thing for Megatron is the gun and pointing him around and pretending to shoot things. Soundwave still does his thing. You hit the button, chest pops open, take the little guy out and transform him. Is it that? I really feel like it's that, because Soundwave keeps that aspect of his identity, whereas Megatron loses his. And maybe it's just a poor run of tanks. Because I'm going to be honest with you, this one wasn't really great, and I don't think the current one, the most recent one, is great either. But here's the thing. The whole thing is nonsense, right? So today, there really isn't a reason to make this argument. If Hasbro was legally capable of doing a gun Megatron, they'd have done it by now, because it would have made a boatload of money. If you can't trust anything else, trust that. It's $1 billion corporation. All they want to do is make money. The only reason, the reasonings is multifaceted. It does come down to safety, laws, etc. What the stores are willing to accept is in stock. That said, you're not without options. Today we have Missing Link. Full restorations of the original G1 toys with modern articulation. Convoy seemed to go great. Bumble and Cliff look like they're going to go great too. I have no doubt that within a year, you are going to physically see a Missing Link Megatron. I don't really think it's going to be all that long before they get around to him. So if you're after a gun Megatron, Japan will still be able to hook you up. Don't worry about that. Also, if you're that impatient, third party, and I'm not one to recommend third party very often, but guess what? They make gun Megatrons because they're all made in China. So they can actually get away with it. Just hope that, they're smart enough to pack it in robot mode so Customs doesn't take it away when they x-ray your box. But that said, I think a lot of it also just comes down to just fear of repeating this. I've seen people who see the listings For 86 Megatron, they think, oh god, they're gonna do they're gonna do that mold again. They're just gonna retool that mold again, aren't they? No, they're not. No, they're not. It'll be completely new. It'll be as screen accurate as they can make a tank Megatron. I don't think we have anything to worry about it. I really do think another big part of this is the fact that the tank Megatrons we've gotten that resemble the G1 character just haven't been nearly as satisfying. You know, look at this guy. He's got this massive backpack of treads and tank shell. So there's that to get around too. I don't even think his tank mode looks all that great, if we're going to be honest here. So looking at what they're done with 86 Optimus, I have no doubt an 86 Megatron is going to be redone from the ground up and be way, way better than this. So take heart. I think 86 Megatron is still going to be a good toy. I think it's going to be fine. I don't think it's anything to I don't think it's anything to start riots over. That said, we need to accept the fact that Megatron is never going to be a gun again. It's not a politically correct thing. It's a multifaceted thing that we just need to accept and move on with our lives. You'll be happier for it. And let's admit, it's stupid for Megatron to turn into a gun and let one of his subordinates wield him. Especially if you're going off the G1 cartoon where the handgun wasn't any stronger than his big arm cannon. So, I'm gonna leave it at that, because this topic exhausts me. And this is just me just putting out a final word. I am not going to acknowledge it again after this video. Megatron's a tank now. Live with it. And there is the video for the day. So, thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time.